Hi, basic physical science students. We're working today on this activity called balanced forces. It should be taped into your notebook as a flipper because it's a two-sided worksheet. And we're going to be examining objects that aren't moving in this activity. So in balanced forces, we have two equal, or maybe more than two, but forces that are balanced out. Acting in opposite directions. And so as you go around the room, you're going to visit stations that have different objects that are staying in one place, and you have to describe the forces acting on those objects. So you're going to answer a couple of forces like, what's pushing or pulling? Is it a contact force or a non-contact force? What's making the force? What's the object that is being forced? So we're going to check our work on these questions. So at station 1, we have a book hanging from a string attached to like a clamp. Okay, so in this case, force A is the string pulling on the book. It's pulling it upward. Okay, it's touching the book, so that makes it a contact force, right? Now, the pusher or the puller is the string in this case pulling. Okay, so we have a string that's pulling on the book, and that book is the object that's being pulled on. Okay. Now, force B is an arrow that's going downward. That's also a pull, but it's a non-contact pull. And it might be easiest to figure that out by recognizing that the puller in this case is the force of gravity. Now, it's still the book that's getting pulled on by gravity. So the book is getting pulled in two directions here. It's getting pulled down by the force of gravity and up by the string. Okay. Our second situation is a cork floating on top of the water. Okay, so we have forces C and D that we have to figure out. So C on the cork is a pull force that is a non-contact force because it's gravity. So our downward forces are often, not always, but often gravity. The object here is the cork, okay? The cork is feeling the force of gravity pulling it downward, okay? Now force D, I would call that a push force. It's a contact force because it's touching the cork, and the pusher is the water itself, pushing the cork up and having it float. So the cork is still the object that's getting pushed. Okay. So notice in the first example, the object was always the book. In the second example, the object is always the cork. All right, next example is a towel hanging on a rack. We've got something going down, and we have a same-sized force going up. So force E, it's going down. That's our gravity pulling on that towel. Okay, so gravity is pulling, and gravity is a non-contact force. Now, it's pulling on the object called a towel. Okay. Our force F is still pulling or pushing on the towel. Okay. In this case, it's going up. It's a push with a touch between the pusher and the towel. It's a contact force because the pusher is the rack. Okay, so the clamp that's hanging off the rack is pushing upward. Right? Okay, turn to the back side of that worksheet. In this case, we have to draw some arrows and we have to label them, okay? We have a boy here standing on the ground. We have to draw our forces in here, Okay, so I'm going to see if I can draw a picture with an arrow. So we've got force G, and I told you over here that the pusher or puller in this case is gravity acting on the boy. Okay, so we're going to have a force that goes downward for the boy, and that is going to be our force G. It's pulling downward. And then we're going to have another force. Oops, hang on a second, guys. Let me draw another one. We're going to have another force going in the opposite direction that's the same size. Okay? And that second force is the floor pushing back on the boy. If it's easier to think about it, you can draw that second arrow down here to show that it's kind of underneath his feet. But your two arrows should be the same size. And you're going to have to talk about, is the floor contacting the boy or is it not contacting the boy? All right? So you're going to answer push, pulls, contact, non-contact, and then draw in your arrows. Label your arrows G and H. Okay? For your cup, you're going to have a picture that looks basically the same. Okay, so let's see if I can copy these and paste these. Okay, for your cup, we still have an up and a down. Okay, so our force labeled the letter I here is a pull that goes downward due to gravity. So our top arrow here, you need to draw it in and label it with the letter I, because it's gravity pulling the cup down. We also have, you could call a push upward, because inside this handle here, we have the rack holding the cup up. Okay, it's pushing on the cup to hold it upright. If you want to call that a pull by the rack, I'm okay with that. But anyway, it's equal and opposite in direction for our gravity force. Okay. Our last one we have is this guy down here with a hanger. Okay. Oops. I've accidentally deleted things. We don't want to delete anything. So we have forces acting on this hanger. But we don't just have two forces, we have three forces. So let's figure out what's happening. Well, we don't have to do these in order. First of all, we've got this force L, which is gravity pulling downward. So we still have our downward arrow. But we also have another arrow that should be going downward, which is the shirt pulling the hanger downward. Okay, so we're going to need to have a second arrow here that's pointing down. So let me put another arrow in here. Okay. So we've got the weight of the hanger and we've got the weight of the shirt both pushing downward. We also have the rack holding the whole thing up, both the hanger and the shirt. Now, nothing is moving. We're not floating upwards and we're not going downwards. So this upward arrow has to be the size as if I added both of those arrows together. So maybe this big. So my upward facing arrow, K, of the rack holding up this shirt and hanger should be my two downward arrows added together. That should be the length of this arrow. Okay, so you guys are going to have to label pulls and pushes, draw in your arrows, label them K, L, and M. Okay, I will see you tomorrow.